Oh my god, every time it's talk, 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 talk. Why can't we just have a podcast in silence?
Hello and welcome back to the Sidescape Gaming Podcast, episode 130. I'm your host, Jake Burke, and I'm joined by my bro, by Ted Libby. And Ted,
I'm here.
before we start the show, before you even speak, you put the show up on Spotify and we're up. I don't think I mentioned that enough on this show to promote it. We're on Spotify. You can send a Spotify link to someone and they don't have to look at our mugs.
Yeah, it's great. It's a non-visual way to watch, which is fantastic.
It's a non-visual way to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great.
Please don't listen to us while driving. That's just draw the line there.
Or do. I think it's great.
All right. Well, hey Ted,
do whatever you want. That's the Side Escape Gaming promise.
Do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. I don't care.
Do whatever you want. We don't care. Watch, don't watch, subscribe, don't subscribe. We're just rolling. This is big.
This is raw and uncut.
Because in like 8 weeks, Ted, if we don't get another subscriber, we're gonna have more episodes than we do subscribers.
Hell yeah, dude.
And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. So we'll make some extra accounts just to boost our numbers.
Just to boost it up. Get your mom. Get Mrs. Libby. Mr. Libby.
No, she wants nothing to do with this podcast.
Does she know about it? She's very ashamed.
I don't think she understands it, to be honest, because I've mentioned it to her twice and she's just like, okay, whatever.
She has no interest.
What's a podcast? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But enough about that, because this is the 130th episode of the Sidescape Gaming Podcast, where every Monday morning a new episode goes live on YouTube.com and Spotify and Amazon Music and something else, Amazon Podcasts.
Amazon Music, Stitcher. Yeah, we're working on Apple Music. Android's kind of funky.
Yeah, probably not going to be on Android.
Once we hit Android podcasts, we're going to really take off.
That's when we're going to explode. I hear our audio numbers are just through the roof, Ted. Through the roof.
All 6 of them or something like that.
Yeah, nice. Can you see the audio numbers? That's good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure half of podcasting is just staring at your own analytics, just going,
What do the YouTube tags really do? I wonder that a lot. What do they really
Everything.
do? Oh, wow.
Everything. That's all that matters.
I just need to know what metadata is, and then I think I can do it. I just have no idea what that is.
That's just data owned by Facebook.
Oh, it's Meta's data. Gotcha. Okay.
Meta's data. Yeah.
It used to be MetaWorld Pieces data.
It's your favorite movies that you added to your Facebook account in 2009.
2009.
That's what metadata is.
Think of like The Hangover, Hangover Part 2. I was edgy.
So edgy.
So edgy, man. I love The Hangover. Ted, we're talking about video games today, but also we're not talking about video games today.
Hell yeah.
Have you seen John Wick 4?
Lack thereof. No.
Oh, are you gonna see it?
I also haven't seen John Wick 3.
Oh, okay.
But there's a part of me that doesn't care and is willing to go see John Wick 4 anyway.
I think you can.
Yeah.
I actually think that you can.
I mean, John Wick 2 is the best. I already know.
Yeah, John Wick 2.
I know which one is the best.
It's the best.
Yeah.
The tasting. It's perfect. But John Wick 4 was very good. It's got Donnie Yen in it, and he's like fucking awesome in it. So
I know. I heard about that.
Yeah.
I heard if James was here to talk about Donnie Yen.
I know. We could talk about IP Man, but we can't. Because he's gone.
We can't.
He's gone. He's buying a house.
Supposedly.
We'll see.
I think this is all a ruse.
He's just tired. And one of your partners
needed an excuse.
Ted, are you playing anything?
Buying a house today.
Are you playing anything interesting right now? I know you want to talk about this game and early access stuff, but before we talk about that thing, I don't want to talk about that right now.
Okay, so I guess little show notes. We're delaying our Resident Evil 4
review
podcast.
Yeah,
review till next week. Because James is here. That being said, can I bitch about it?
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear you bitch about it, but I also think you need to finish this game before we review, because I think you'd love this game.
I can't.
Why?
Can't do it. It's broken. I can't play it.
No way.
So yeah. So Resident Evil 4 remake came out. And I have apparently this is a problem that's affecting Xbox controllers. So it's happening on PCs and it's happening on Xboxes. But it seems really limited. Not a lot of people seem to have this problem. But I've tried multiple controllers. What is happening for me? And it was really funny. Okay, so I should say I played this game with a good friend of mine, he is a Resident Evil 4 fanatic.
Okay.
Hasn't played 1 through 3 or
Just
5 onward,
4.
I don't think. Just 4, but he's played it like that was his game as a kid, and he's played it on all 3 of the original consoles.
Okay.
And in VR. He says it's a really good. He loves it in VR. So he was watching me play it. So I got a good gist of what was supposed to be happening. But basically, I was missing all of my shots. Hilariously bad. It was really stupid. And of course, we'll get more into it, but hitting your shots is a big part of staying alive in Resident Evil 4. And so I was just missing. And eventually he joked to me, he said, like, you should buy the sniper rifle because you're so bad at this. Like, I want to see you aim for real. And so I did, and I was fucking it up, and it was really bad. And so he ultimately left at the end of the day. And I kept playing it, and I was like, you know what? He's right. Like, I'm really suck at this game. This is super weird. Yeah, something is wrong. So I started doing some science. The right joystick has...
Did you have like graphs everywhere and stuff?
Yeah, like it has so my right joystick has a huge dead zone. Which I looked it up is a confirmed problem among the community that an Xbox controller seems to have this problem. Nobody's sure why. Capcom has not said anything, but basically I can jiggle my right thumb fully and not move the cursor at all. And then when I hit the edge, of the joystick, when I'm all the way, that's when it kicks in, but it kicks in at max. So you're aiming your gun and nothing is happening, and then you jolt. It's awful. I can't hit anybody's knees to save my life.
That sucks.
And like I did a lot of science on it, and I was trying to do it, and then I took a break. Maybe they patched it. Came back to it a few days later, and I tried just playing it, and I couldn't get over it.
So
you just don't move, and then you jolt.
It's fixed.
It is not fixed. No.
Oh, okay,
it is not fixed.
Okay. Damn it.
There's a theory on the internet that it's an RE engine problem, because I guess some people had this problem with RE7 and 8. And it might be a firmware of the controller problem. Nobody knows for sure. It seems pretty isolated. But it fucking sucks. And I left off. I am on chapter 3.
Yeah.
With no ammo of any kind.
Because you just
and no money.
It all.
Because I waste a full clip each person. Just bang, 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 and eventually the only way to play for me is to wait until they come into my crosshairs and I shoot them in the knee, which is not a good way to play that game.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't be able to play really a boss. Yeah.
No, I haven't even gotten to a boss.
Damn it! Well, that really sucks. Once it's fixed, you should play this game because you would love this game.
Yeah. My intention is to keep coming back to it over the year before Game of the Year to try and beat it before Game of the Year.
Yeah, because
you were right when you said it was up my alley. Leon Kennedy is the worst 90s
but he's also
hero
cool,
in the best possible way.
Yeah.
He's also kind of cool.
Yeah. Ted, the way that the game ends, and I hope you don't know, because I didn't.
I do not. I will not be spoiling myself on anything.
You will be like, this might be my favorite game because, of course, this is how this game has to end.
It's
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it. It was so fun. I'm actually playing it again. I'm playing it a second time.
Yeah, I really like everything about it. What my friend was telling me, I'm digging it. If it wasn't for how shitty I was doing, that intro scene, fantastic. With the title card.
Yep.
But yeah, overall, my experience with it has just been god awful, and it's because of this dead zone issue.
That sucks.
I think I showed you. I was texting you guys videos of me aiming down sights and just nothing was happening. It's infuriating.
That's so bad. That's crazy. It just can't be. It's not fixed.
Yeah, this is the first technical issue I've had with a video game since Cyberpunk.
Yeah. And boy, were there technical issues.
Yeah. So it's a real bummer. It's an even bigger bummer that it's not really a widespread issue.
Yeah.
Because it means that Capcom might not pay attention to it
for a while. Yeah.
I guess there's a small group of people who were affected for it for RE8,
the
most recent one, and that was never addressed. Capcom never said it was a problem.
I feel like they'll fix everything for this game though, because it's been so insanely well received that they'll want everybody playing this.
They got my money and they got a 10 out of 10. They have no reason to fix this game anymore.
That is true.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, I think they'll fix it.
I even tried to see if they went back to the original control scheme if there was an option, kind of like in Metroid Prime, because that was just that was just left stick.
Because
so I could at least play it the old way.
You would aim, and that's how you would stop moving, and then you'd move around your cursor.
You'd pull the trigger and then aim mode. You couldn't move. You just aim, but it'd be on the left stick. You know,
I would
GameCube
hate
stick.
That so much. I could never go back and play that way.
At least I can take a shot.
Well, yeah, for you. I mean, I didn't have any problems on PlayStation. Both my thumbs worked.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think James played it with an Xbox controller on his PC, and he seemed fine. So I'm going to keep trying it with different controllers.
Can you plug in a DualSense to your Xbox?
Not officially.
Or like a PlayStation 4 controller?
You can buy a dongle that's like an adapter, which I might do anyway for a fight stick, but that's a Street Fighter 6 conversation. We'll have that
don't
later.
even have that. I don't want to talk about that game. That game looks bad.
I've kind of come around on it. It doesn't look as bad as I originally thought. Did you say all fighting games look bad?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, but let's just speak the truth here. That is just hitting a button over and over again. But yeah, it didn't look great. You know? You know what I'm talking about?
Street Fighter 6 bad. Moving on.
Bad. Don't want to talk about it anymore. Give me a new Injustice. Let me figure out what's happening in that story, and we'll move on. That's it.
Who knows?
Yeah, so I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil 4, and it's really good. Replaying it, and I like that you get there's fun now, it's meant to be replayed, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Apparently, it's meant to be speed run, and which is crazy. There's an RPG that you can buy, which, by the way, the RPG is a one-time use weapon until you can rebuy it. Because I didn't know that, and I used it, and I was like, well, can't use it for a while. And there's one part of the game where you have to use the RPG basically, but they have an unlimited, an infinite RPG that you can buy for 2 million of the money currency. In the game, and I was like, that's actually really. That's pretty cool. All right, what is this game? What's the other game? The game with the bad name you're talking about to me? What do you got?
Oh yeah.
What's
Okay.
this bad name?
Yeah, so we're loosely talking about early access because I want to talk about this game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this game's great. It's called Crab Champions. And everyone needs me to. The people are asking me to talk about it, so I'm here for the people.
Yeah. For the people.
Yeah. So,
the everyman, as you know.
Yeah, exactly. This is the everyman's game.
Yeah. Okay. Who's the developer? Give me a developer name.
So Crab Champions, it released April 1st of 2023. So that's just to clue you in. It was an I thought it was an April Fool's joke, and then my friend was like, "No, this is a real game."
That's right.
It's released by he goes by Noise Storm, but this is one guy, which is really cool.
That's cool.
So this is one guy. He made an early access game, and I'll just briefly talk about it. It's a Risk of Rain clone.
Okay.
But it looks like I don't know if it's Unity Engine or if it's Unreal, but it looks like one of those games where it's a whole bunch of different assets that probably were taken from different artists. You know what I mean? It's got
I'm looking it up right now.
Its flow is a little everywhere, but you play as an anatomically correct crab, holding a rifle.
Yeah,
in your
I'm
right
watching
claw.
a GIF of him just flipping over and over and over again.
Yeah, and you spawn into an arena. A whole bunch of enemies, different spawn, and then there's some kind of arena objective, whether that be survive for a minute or just defeat all the enemies, something like that.
Okay.
And you do that objective. When you complete it, you get loot, some kind of random chest based on how well you did, and then you move on to the next level. It's a full-on roguelite.
Okay.
And that's the overall premise of the game. It's very silly because you're running around as this crab, and it's all of your enemies are just obnoxious. There's slugs that explode and other crabs with other guns.
Of course.
It's silly. But the reason I fell in love with this game is the movement.
Okay.
Your crab character jumps and he flies and he picks up speed. And then if you hold down the shift key on the computer, he will slide when he hits the ground, he doesn't slow down. And so you can time that with another jump. And then you get a double jump in the same way that, remember Rocket League had the double jump where in the air you could pivot in a different direction? So you have the Rocket League jump coupled with this slide means that you can just fly around the map super fast. And it is so much fun to just fly around this map with your shotgun crab just blasting everybody out of the sky.
Okay. Is it multiplayer?
But outside, it is multiplayer.
Okay. So it's Risk of Rain. Okay.
My friend told me about this game on April 1st. I told my Risk of Rain people. So far, 9 of us have all bought it. It's spreading like wildfire. Crab Champions, the new game of the year. And it's super fun. It's got all of the depth that you want out of a roguelike. Think of like a Hades or even a Risk of Rain, where you're waiting in the lobby, just staring at the different options to take into your run, and just being like, well, if you pair this gun with these perks and get these abilities, you could really have a good build on your hands. It does all of that stuff surprisingly well.
Okay.
And also, this is made in early access by one guy. And over the weekend, he has been out there talking to people. He's been on Reddit. A patch released as of today, like 5 days later. And it feels like a guy just writing a newsletter of like, hey guys, like I heard some of your concerns, and I fixed some of them for you. Here you go. And like, he did. Some of the obvious concerns are fixed.
Huh.
And so far it's been this really cool experience of like being in touch with the developer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like so many, I mean, as I just told you with Resident Evil, like I have a problem and there is nobody to talk to. You know what I mean?
Capcom,
you can just post on Reddit
listen.
and you can post on the Capcom forums and like hope that somebody notices you. But at the end of the day, like I'm 1 out of 1 million purchases. And so it is really cool to have this direct developer connection. And it's honestly, it's kind of sold me on early access. We've talked a lot on this channel about like, I don't want to play it until it's done, right? I don't want to play an unfinished product, et cetera, et cetera. But with something like this, where it's like an $8 game that one guy made, and it functions perfectly well, single player and multiplayer. It's deep, it's thoughtful, and you can suggest changes that he might see. Is a really cool thing, and it's a really cool wave to ride, no pun intended. Of like, like I'm here to watch this game adjust until it becomes kind of the best version of itself. It's super cool. Crab Champions.
I'm not gonna play this game. Nothing against
everyone else should.
I just don't
everyone
like.
Else
I don't
should.
like.
Get this
I don't like the Risk of Rain kind of games, but that sounds very cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting that he's like really active with his community to like figure out what they want from the game. That's an interesting like idea and angle of early access that I feel like doesn't often happen.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's just like being less one-man team kind of thing.
I think so. And also just, I mean, kind of making a joke game that actually has substance goes a long way. I bought this thinking I was going to play it for 20 minutes and then be done. And then a lot of my friends were messaging me on Sunday being like, I've played this for 9 hours and I'm nowhere near done. Like I'm deep in.
How many like, does it have a lot of levels and stuff? Like, is it a pretty built out game, or is it like how Hades was like, you're done with the first world and back to the start. Nothing really changed because you're testing it out.
It's a very classical roguelike in that I think there's 4 major levels, 4 major areas. But it's mostly about playing with those numbers. So you're going to see the same enemies over and over again. It's just going to be like, these enemies have the poison, modifier.
Gotcha.
These enemies move super fast. Like it's all about little modifiers that slightly change things. Overall, I think I've seen pretty much everything there is to see so far. And it's just about like going in with all these different multipliers.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, to me, it got me thinking a lot about early access and about being with a game during its like adjustment process. You know what I mean? Because like, did you play Hades at all under early access?
I played like
Were you there for any of that?
I played the beginning, like the first time, like literally the launch day of it. I think like the next day I played the first world that they had complete, and then that's why I played it like a few times. And I was like, oh okay, but this is everything that's there, and so then I just waited for it to fully release. Like I owned it the entirety of all of its early access, and I think I played it once, being like, okay, this isn't done, so I'll come back. But I feel like that was supposed to be pretty collaborative too, of like talking with the community and seeing what they liked and what they didn't like, and it helped them kind of own stuff a little bit, which is a really interesting take. Obviously, that
and it seems like nowadays, especially because you have to stick the landing of your release, quote unquote, it just seems like a better option. Like I am now of the belief that it's a better option now to just work with the people to get the best product as opposed to try and release what you think they might want. You know what I mean? Think of like we'll talk about the most recent debacle, the Suicide Squad.
Right.
And if they had released the game in early access in some kind of beta form and we're just like, hey, this is what we have right now, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Like the entire tone could be different of like, well, we don't really like this.
Right.
Okay, well, let's start changing this. Here's our roadmap of how we want to make these larger changes.
Well, and that's probably almost impossible for a AAA team of, 800 people or whatever Rocksteady is. I imagine like the fact that it's this one dude makes it like he is the filter and he just can take and pick and choose the ideas rather than like you have that early access program and you have one guy being like, well, did you see what Jack, this person said? And what about Zach? And like kind of this whole, I think that would be
I'm
much
sure the most
different.
I mean, it must be, even with like 3 people, it must be insanely difficult to be like, well, I'm the idea guy, but I'll have to talk to our programmer to see if your suggestion is even possible.
Right.
But I mean, so many of these small time, or I should say early access games seem to be more of the small time crowd, like, smaller game developers.
Yeah. Like, okay, so Valheim was is still probably an early access because it seems like that's a game that'll never come out kind of thing. But like, have they worked with their community like that? Or are they just like doing bigger updates without like input? Like, how is that kind of going? Because I feel like,
yeah. So Valheim, they have worked with their community. They have addressed a lot of the concerns in Valheim have not so much been with like, give me more content, even though that is obviously what everybody wants who gets to the end. But they have been filling in the gaps in between where like, when I first played Valheim, there were these gaps in playing the game where you're like, I just have kind of run out of stuff to do and I just need to grind to the harder difficulty. And they've kind of gone back and like, we've made some more food at the beginning of the game, so it's easier for you to cook. And they've evened out the like process of playing the game, which on this podcast I said I didn't really like because I got to the end and then I was like, I want more, and they were like, well, we got beginner level soup.
Yeah, we fixed the beginning. Need soup.
Yeah, but they have listened to their community in that sense. I will say that Valheim was at kind of the tip of the spear when roadmaps became really important. Because there were like a lot of games that come out of original early access games, Steam Greenlight, if you remember that far back. Like they'd come out and they'd be like, oh, we're gonna keep working on it. And now, like in Crab Champions, when you load up the game and you're in your lobby, there's a giant billboard right next to your character that you can look at. That's just like, these are my plans. This is my long-term roadmap. This is my short-term fixes. This is everything I want to do in the next couple weeks.
That's
and even Against the Storm, a game that James recommended and I've started playing, has that too, where they, in their main menu, they have like, here's our complete roadmap and here's a countdown to our next patch. And so you can literally see what they want to do on a patch by patch basis, which is really cool. And that's, for them, that's big stuff. They're like, we're adding more characters, more buildings, new areas. And you're like, these are big changes.
That's a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's interesting, the content roadmap. I wonder too, like we were talking about, like, what if Avengers like that, would that have succeeded if it went through early access? Like if it came out, and, I don't know, dude, that game is like dead. Like they just put out, did you see, this is crazy to me. War Machine was going to be a character. Like he was going to be a DLC character down the line. When they data, mapped it, they like saw that he is in there. They released an Iron Man skin like last week. That's just War Machine skin. It's the asset of War Machine, but like because the game is dead, they're not making War Machine. There's like put him in the game still. I'm like, oh, that is like. So yeah, and that game will just shut down because like there's no single player part of it.
Right. It seems like we are now entering a world. I don't want to call it a video games recession, but like if your giant live service game can't withstand, you get shut down.
Yeah.
Right. Your beta ends, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they saw the writing on the wall for Suicide Squad, and they pulled it back to an undisclosed time.
Yeah. Like if you can't stick your landing and find a community, you're dead on arrival.
Yeah.
And that's just, unfortunately, that's just how it is. So it's like, at least give us a chance to find out if you like it. Let us work out the kinks with you as opposed to trying to work them all out ahead of time. I'm really into it. I'm sold. I'm here to be at a game's conception and to kind of work with it. Obviously, there are exceptions. I think if you were to tell me I have a single player JRPG that's in early access, I haven't finished it yet, I'd be like, okay.
So, yeah, that's for me. It's like I wouldn't like when Hollow Knight came out, like if it came out in early access state, it did not. But like if it would have, I would not wanted to play like one section of Hollow Knight and then it ends and it's like pick it back up, when we come back out with the next part.
A couple months. Yeah,
that's really kicking me in the nads.
Yeah, I think, and maybe this is just a sign of the times of like it really helps the roguelike genre.
I think that's
you're gonna be picking it up and playing it over and over again, and this is the loop of the game. And so we're gonna make small adjustments so that as you keep doing this loop over and over again, you'll notice differences and you'll see new things.
Yeah, and I think like Bungie's been able to do that pretty well. It feels like with Destiny about like how they've been able to update that game. I mean, not now. People don't like it because of Lightfall, but guess what? With Ted, with Destiny, there's always just another expansion that brings everybody right back, and then they go, "Destiny's back, baby!" So get ready for Walls of Firecon or whatever.
For so long, I have heard people, friends of mine, people in the community, just talk about like, Destiny, like I'm still in it. Like it's still hooked me, and now I'm seeing them like being like, I'm fucking done with Destiny. Like I think people might actually be done with Destiny.
We'll see. We always hear that. We'll see. Bungie's gonna be doing a lot of this stuff, but like when they were away from EA, they were allowed to be much more like involved with their community, and like working with them. And I think that's really interesting to like get to like those live service games, the roguelikes, the ones with replayability. I think is really interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
And roguelike, it's not all roguelike. You know, city builders, right? More management games as you think of like your two options at the start of the game are like, do you want to start a new game or do you want to load your old game? And if you're picking new game more than you're loading up your old save, early access might be the perfect place for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually think like Wargroove, that probably would have benefited from an early access kind of playtesting almost zone of like a widespread being like, ooh, this is too slow. We need to add checkpoints. Like all that stuff that came in that big patch was like an early access patch basically. Of like, oh, that makes sense.
So, yeah, exactly. Of like, we now have a bunch of data. We're gonna work out some kinks.
Yeah.
Because Wargroove is a great example of a game that I put down due to minor errors that didn't show up in my overall opinion, but I was just like, nah.
Yeah.
And I put that game down for years and came back to it after you told me that they had a patch for a lot of that stuff. Which is wild.
After the announcement of Wargroove 2.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because like I mean, No Man's Sky has been such a great example of that too. Of like, they are the fully released early access game that is just being built upon.
Yeah, they have a weird redemption story. That was a full price game that I don't know. I refunded when everyone was kind of like, this is kind of like I played an hour and I was like, and I think you or maybe someone else was like, this is it. This is the game right now. And I was just like, okay.
I played so much of No Man's Sky in the beginning. I really liked it.
You did?
Yeah.
In the beginning?
Yeah.
I thought you came back to it later.
I did too eventually, and being like, oh, now it's like a space flying game. Very cool, because that was really what it was.
It
was just a mining game, and I was like, I'm pretty into this. I'll mine and fix ships, and sure. But now it's crazy. I tried to get back into it, and it's like I don't have the time.
I know.
Is a whole world to learn.
It's one of those games I look at and just go like, not today.
Not today.
Maybe, but not today.
Yeah, like if I had infinite time,
it'll always be like exciting.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I am now with all these live service games. Though I know that they're just not the games for me. I'm really hoping Diablo. Yeah. I'm like into Diablo because that sounds awesome. Ted, help me with this live on the show. Where do I play Diablo? Do I play it on my PC? Do I play it on my PS5?
At home. I think you will prefer it on a PS5.
Okay.
I think you like. I think it is a perfectly fine controller game.
Okay.
I know my roommate has been a traditional mouse and keyboard Diablo player, but his computer can't handle it anymore. Can't hang. So he was like, I'm gonna. He even said like part of this me getting this demo is like I'm gonna just see if I like controller.
Mm.
And he did. It's totally fine on controller.
Okay. I'm very excited.
It's a little weird because you're a little character on a big screen.
Yeah.
But if you're used to playing any of those kind of older hack and slash RPGs of the PS2 era, I think you'll be perfectly fine with Diablo.
Okay. I'm excited. I'm excited for all of us to gather around and play this devil game.
The Dying Fire and play the devil game.
Yeah, play the devil game. Hail Satan. Yeah. I'm just curious about it. But I'm very excited for it now. And I'm hoping that's my like game I come back to a lot.
Yeah, and to finish off the early access talk, I had a question for you, which is where does early access go? And I mean that in terms of like consoles. Because if we can establish that like video games need to stick their landing now, games as a service needs to find an audience, and kind of waiting for your right moment is now, it's getting harder and harder as we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are a console game, there is not really a place for you if you're small, and there's not really any room to maneuver if you're big. So where do console games figure this out?
I mean, like maybe Game Pass? Like maybe that's like a Game Pass program down the line where they have like an early access program?
Yeah, that was my prediction last year, or maybe even it was this year.
No,
I think it was last year. Where like I really thought Xbox would come out swinging. Remember what is it? Nindies? Do you remember Nindies?
Yeah.
Nintendo Indies?
Yeah.
Their stupid name that never turned into anything.
They still try it every so often.
I thought Xbox would come out of the gate and be like, this is our special store for small games. We're highlighting small time, kind of the golden age of Xbox 360 when Super Meat Boy came out.
Yeah, Xbox Live Arcade.
But
I don't think Xbox can right now. They can't focus on anything but trying to make a goddamn video game. I think that's really like...
But they don't.
But they do.
They don't need to make games. They have us all under Game Pass.
No, because once Sony figures it out and Xbox has no games, I think it shifts. Once Sony just copies Game Pass, which is absurd that they just didn't just copy Game Pass.
Man.
How dumb is it they have this fucking 3-tiered system that makes no... Anyways.
Yeah. Well,
I just think like that's
at the end of the day, like, and this is an overgeneralization of both sides, but there is a finite amount of time that you can spend with PlayStation games because they're all bombastic single player games.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to play God of War 2 endlessly.
Right.
You might play Halo endlessly or
Forza
or a live service game.
That's a fair point.
Like I think PlayStation beats Xbox if I know they own Destiny now, but if they get a live service game, if you're always paying monthly to play the PlayStation game.
Right. PlayStation back.
Yeah. And Xbox is in a position of just being like, we have Forza. Do you want to play a great racing game?
And that's why they're trying to get Call of Duty. I mean, we'll have Call of Duty.
Yeah. Well, we can focus the conversation on PlayStation of like, why haven't they done a more of like an indie, or because they don't even have an early access program.
No.
Microsoft has this game preview, which is this kind of sad attempt at an early access, in my opinion.
Yeah, like a sad like demo
PlayStation has. PlayStation. I think like their biggest contribution is they highlight small games sometimes in their videos.
Well, they used to be really indie focused though. Like PlayStation 4, especially the beginning when they had like no games, they were like super indie focused. And then I think as they became like the big budget studio, like they became, Marvel or whatever, like they didn't need to focus on small stuff anymore because their big stuff was enough, and they're on this great cycle now of just putting out games. So I think that's like where it has to come from Xbox in that.
Yeah, and I think Sony can forget this entire conversation right at this time. Sony doesn't make live service games.
No.
Sony doesn't make games that need adjusting, right?
They bought Bungie though to make some sort of live service. Help them make service games.
Right. So I guess I should say in present day, in future, who knows?
Yeah.
Like Sony doesn't need an early access program because none of their games are the kind of game that you want to tweak necessarily.
Right.
But Xbox does. And especially with a Game Pass, they already have an incredibly large user base, and they could easily just be like, this is our like games in progress. Like, please come and leave your feedback.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense
that's
because, sorry, but like on that idea is
no, go
you
for it.
don't have to risk money through. I mean, that's why Game Pass is very. I mean, like Netflix or whatever, but like you're not risking anything by trying something on Game Pass.
Right.
Like Atomic Hearts, I would never buy that game, but I'm gonna try it because it's on Game Pass. And it's
Right.
pretty good, you know. Like, so I think that's where this indie kind of game preview program could actually be really interesting. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm surprised we're not seeing it. And I'm wondering if kind of the most recent rough waters of AAA development, where on the one side we have Ubisoft complaining that games are getting like literally too big.
Yeah. And it's their staff's fault. Remember they
and
said it's the staff not
yeah,
trying hard enough.
yeah, right. The tower of games is too high. It costs too much to do this right. And if you fail forever, right? Your game dies after 6 months.
When your company goes bankrupt because games are so expensive. Like if you fail,
it seems tailor-made to pivot back towards smaller games, towards smaller creators, who might not have the resources to fine-tune their game or make a perfect product on day one, but who are able and ready to work with a community to kind of find their niche.
I wonder, like, Ubisoft had their like Child of Light, Valiant Hearts. There's like 2 other games were under their like indie umbrella. Remember they did like a smaller game program. It was called something Ubisoft Presents or something like that. But it was like a thing. It was like these artsy Child of Light and Valiant Hearts, like the 2 that were really good from that program. But they must have saw like little to no return on that to like only go 3 to 4 games and then just cut it.
Yeah.
Like there must have been something really like, it is not worth it to try to do this compared to making 2 more Assassin's Creeds or whatever, I don't know, whatever. So
yeah,
that I think that's a weird point in the industry is like how many people are playing these small indie games. Like obviously Hades, everybody is, but how many on
Crab
average
Champion
are playing?
is just a winner.
Right, yeah, but like, you probably don't need to sell a lot of Crab Champions to get this game profitable or like to make it worth his time.
Exactly.
Where Ubisoft probably needs to sell 40,000 copies of Child of Light at least to like just make its money back or whatever it is, like.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's got to be some
disconnect. I'm looking at Ubisoft's page right now. This is on their Steam page for the record. They don't say anything. It is just a page with their 10 big brands.
Nice.
And that's it. I can click on each of these. I can click to see all of the Tom Clancy games.
Ooh,
I can click to see all the Far Cry games, but there is no like little people section here.
UbiArt, maybe I think is what it might have been. UbiArt, I think is what it was.
It's a silly name.
Yeah, UbiArt, I think.
Well, Ubisoft, they just released like days ago, maybe not days ago. Like they have a game called Roller Champions.
Oh yeah, this game has been in development for like ever. Is
that what I'm thinking of? And it's like, yeah. Okay, it technically came out in December, and it's an Ubisoft game, a small scale Ubisoft game. Just missed the mark. Just no, I didn't hear about it until. Yeah, I didn't hear about it until now, and now I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of interesting, and it's like already DOA.
Sucks.
And it's just like, what do we do?
Yeah. I think then that's such a big thing. I mean, what was Fall Guys had that like historic rise and then just like rampant decline, like just.
I mean,
people just
Fall Guys falls into that. It's still going, and it's still going. It's like Rocket League. It's going weirdly strong.
Yeah, but like it had community
that. Oh yeah, because everyone was playing Fall Guys, and now Fall Guys is exactly where it should be, which is kind of like children.
Yeah,
it's like young kids who don't really know games, and their parents turn on the controller for them.
Yeah,
which is perfect. That's exactly where Fall Guys needs to be. Yeah,
I won that game once. I was pretty proud of myself. I want to brag.
Nice.
Before we go, Ted, before we say goodbye on this show.
Speaking of
death. E3. 3 E's. We don't know what it stands for. Probably Elephant Enormous Electronics. That's the
one of the words, right?
Yeah. They announced this. It was really interesting. They did this big thing at the beginning of the year. We're back, baby. bah, 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 you can't stop E3. You thought you could kill us. Even a pandemic can't take us down. We're back. And not only that, our headliner is
Turns out.
Ubisoft, right? And they're like, yeah. And then like a month ago, Ubisoft was like, yeah, about that E3 thing, I think we're out. And then everybody just waited. And then E3 was like, yeah, we're done. Gone.
Yeah.
Out.
Out.
And like probably not coming back. Like, let's be honest, this thing's gone. Are you bummed?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'll let you speak on it first.
I'm kind of bummed.
Are you bummed?
Like I kind of am. Bummed? Here's the deal. We don't lose anything from losing. Oh. Everybody wait for Ted. Let's wait for Ted to put his
I want to hear you. I want to hear your opinions better.
Did you clean the earwax out?
Yeah, exactly. I just scooped it out.
You ever just look at a man's ear and be like, you got a lot of earwax. That's gross. I did that the other day.
I can't say that I do that, no.
Anyways.
I don't look at a lot of men's ears.
Oh, you should. Like, find Eric, look in his ear and see if he cleans his ear pretty well. Mm-hmm. Let me know.
All right. I'll check it out.
Yeah, send me a text.
Full review coming next week.
Yeah, please. As we review Resident Evil 4, you can't, so you can review Eric's ears. No, anyways, I'm kind of bummed about E3. Only that like E3 is gone, but like we don't lose anything from E3 going away. Like we're still gonna get all of our press conferences, and that's what we liked about it anyways. But I think like what we lose is kind of like we were already losing it because Cyberpunk is a perfect example. Like journalists playing games and telling us. Like I think that was a big thing that E3 kind of allowed. And was like, we played Breath of the Wild for like 15 minutes on this. Here's what we played. But like Cyberpunk, they had all these controlled demos and everybody was like, you should see the shit we're seeing in Cyberpunk. It's going to change video games. And then didn't. So that is awkward. But like, I feel like I'm bummed that E3 is gone because there's so many like great moments of like summertime and like Friday's the PlayStation conference, you know, Xbox is on Thursday, like Monday's Nintendo, like James would come over and we'd watch like 3 press conferences in a row. And like, that's like what him and I would do. And like, that's kind of done. We'll never get like an Xbox like presenting their console and like telling you it's going to cost $500. You can't share games. Like you will always have to be online. And then like the next morning, Sony comes out and it's like, well, they announced a console. Ours is $100 cheaper. It's $400. You don't always have to be online. And how do we share games? Hey, come on the stage. And they just handed a game to one another on stage, like making fun of Xbox. And we'll never get that again because it's these highly produced, curated shows that are, you know, months apart. So that I think is kind of a bummer because that was so special in the games industry. But we also like, we'll still get all of our shit watching announcement videos.
Yeah, for me, E3 was never really felt like it was for me. And I mean that in the same way that you mean that we're still going to get all of these press conferences.
Yeah,
everybody is still going to be telling us everything that's coming out, and they're all going to do it in the beginning of summer. But like the actual event, with the exception of the fact that it was all happening live over like 4 or 5 days, didn't really matter to me.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because I think it's because you know, it's for the past 10 years, like kind of like what you're saying, where there used to be a time when journalists and press people would go to the show and come back with like magic in their eyes.
Yeah.
Of just like, I've seen the future and I need to tell you.
Yeah.
And nowadays with, you know, HD streaming video, with live video streaming, with demos, like it always just felt like it was available to me. Like I could see the future too.
Yeah, I get it.
So I didn't really need somebody else to go and then tell me about it. And that's just kind of the vibe I was getting, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
And you know, for such a long time now, EA pulled out, Xbox pulled out, PlayStation pulled out. Like, you know, what is E3 anymore? Like, is it just Ubisoft's event that they spend too much money on?
Yeah, I think like as E3's reigned back, that's kind of how I felt. It's lost the magic of where it was, you know, 5, 8, 7 years ago, 12 years ago. Like I loved that it was all one like 4-day period where it's like for 4 days we're just gonna hear about every company's like big new games that they want to tell you about, and they're all one-upping each other.
Yeah.
And like that was really cool. But we'll still have that. It'll just be spread out, so it's not like But like that was so like a condensed period of felt different for like, people that played video games.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, the Cyberpunk idea was very telling too, of just like also games just don't come out like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, you know, we kind of are looking at it from rose tinted glasses, like, oh, remember all those great games that were released or announced at E3.
Yeah.
Well, there were also a lot of shit games that were announced at E3.
True.
There are a lot of games that were announced at E3 that are still not out yet, that are just TBD. We don't know.
Metroid Prime 4 was announced like 5 years ago.
Yeah. I can't remember who said this, so I apologize for not quoting them, but somebody once said that E3 was invented for Toys R Us representatives to go and find out how many copies of X video game to put on their shelves for Christmas.
Yeah.
And that to me was very telling of like, we haven't needed that for a very long time.
No.
You know, there was once a time when an E3 trailer meant the stores, the shelves of Target would be full of X game on the PlayStation. And that's just not how this works anymore. A, because games aren't really on shelves, and B, because that company might just go, actually, wait, sorry, never mind. It's coming out in January. And then, you know, it's all changed.
Yeah.
You know, delays, just again, this same nature we're talking about with early access, where the fluidity at which games are released has changed so much that E3 doesn't feel nearly as important as it once did.
Oh yeah, like you have to think about like Suicide Squad coming out in what it was supposed to be May, in March they pushed it back to an undisclosed time. Like stores would have already had their orders and their like this is what like they'll still be ordering. GameStop obviously will be, but like the bigger push to buy it at a store was so different back in like the 2000s rather than it is now. In the aughts, as they say, Ted. The aughts.
The aughts, of course. The aughts.
Aughts.
Yeah. So you don't think it's ever going to come back? You think it's done?
I think it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like
behind the barn.
Because they had the people that were running PAX that were going to be running this one. Like this was their first time running E3.
Mm-hmm.
And even like I think their statement, like the management group was like, and we'll be back next year. The ESA that owns E3 and their statement did not include that. Like, so I just think there's a disconnect on like, well, this might just not be worth it.
Yeah.
It makes sense. And especially because, I mean, people gathering in big places is happening less.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think I'm from the nerdier video game crowd. That might be a thing as well. So, who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see.
Yeah. Well, I was just also going to say, I also, and maybe this is just me getting older, but I also think that a lot of what E3 was kind of losing a lot of its steam. No pun intended for steam. Like, let me put it to you this way. 10, 15 years ago, E3 was just could be the Wild West of games coming out.
Yeah.
Because new IPs were hot.
Yeah.
People were, there's a lot more, we're going to try new things. But in the past, I'll say 15 years, and I'm making that number out of my butt. A lot of these companies have really just settled into what they're going to do.
Right.
Where it's like PlayStation's giant presentation is going to be about a bombastic single player game with some great cutscenes.
Yep. Cutscenes, quick time action events, and gunplay.
Ubisoft is going to release a couple of their 10 giant franchises. It's like, do we really need a giant event to showcase Assassin's Creed 14, 15?
And also don't forget your like 15-minute thing on Just Dance, and then your also 10-minute dev doc on the Rainbow Six community.
Also Just Dance 15 as well.
Yep.
Yeah, like the newest patch update for the live service game Rainbow Six.
That's every Xbox presentation, Ted, when Bethesda's talking and they're like, and now our update for Elder Scrolls Online, and you're like, all right, well, I don't need to be here for the next 3 to 5 minutes. About the minds of Capricorn.
Exactly. There are 12 mainline Assassin's Creed games.
Damn.
But yeah, it's like, it's kind of like where, like, for what one thing that I really come to these press conferences for, and to be fair, Xbox from a couple of years ago, maybe 7 years ago, was doing this, where they would just come out with new stuff you'd never heard of. and it was just wild. Of like, holy shit, what's that going to be? That seems totally new. I've never seen that before. And I don't remember if it was last year or the year before where I was just watching. Granted, it was pandemic times and things were online, but it was still just like, oh, okay, they're doing another one of those. Here's another Elder Scrolls Online update. Like things that just didn't feel fresh. E3 lost its freshness a long time ago.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's gone. I think we're dead.
To bring this conversation around, make it for indie games. make a giant trade show that's for smaller type stuff.
That's what PAX used to be,
right?
PAX was used to be indie stuff. Now it's like, I don't know, weird. But
now it's energy drinks.
Yeah, it's games. Logan Paul's energy drink, whatever that one is, Prime or whatever.
I don't know. Original IPs only is kind of a silly idea, but just make it fresh. E3, if E3 needs to come back, it needs to be fresh.
Yeah, and I just don't see it. I don't see that kind of big. I think it's because like it was all these big publishers in one spot, and they'll never do that again. That just won't be how it's ever going to be. Especially with Nintendo,
they don't have to do that ever again.
No, and I don't. Yeah, why would you? Why would you want your marketing to be eaten up the very next day by someone else's marketing? There's no benefit.
Xbox will. Well, I mean, they might, but Xbox will never have that moment again of like, we're going to have to go first.
Yeah.
So that means someone else can undercut us.
Right. Yeah. They just never have to do that. Like, and I think like it's actually kind of shitty that you'd have to go through that. It's bad business. So
yeah,
it makes sense. But yeah, it's just kind of, for me, it's a bummer because it was such a cool event to like kind of follow and track and like, holy crap, I got to go home. It's 5:00. Sony's going to do the thing. And they'll still do it.
I guess I should point out that E3 was important to a whole side of this that you and I never interacted with ever. And that is, it was a great place to walk around with a resume in your hand and a portfolio and just go, hey, I'm actually with the Ubisoft people tonight, but our game's about to be finished and I'm a really talented person. Xbox, I heard you having a party nearby. Can I come rub some fingers? These, I mean, trade shows traditionally are a great place for skilled individuals to, touch elbows.
Yeah.
And I think we are losing something very significant in that, which is a big bummer.
Yeah.
That is something I can't speak to with any scientific knowledge, but I'm assuming that's going to be a hit. We're not talented, exactly.
Not at all. So, hey.
Jake, if you were invited to a podcasting convention, would you go?
Yeah. Why not? Because
why not?
I'd love to learn.
Yeah.
I'd love to learn, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Like, I want to learn like how to use metadata to my advantage.
Don't worry. Every single talk is going to be about that. So you're good to go.
I want to take your metadata and make it a subscriber. You know what I'm saying?
Oh dear.
It's all about ad revenue, Ted. And today we're brought to you by.
You just gotta go on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. They were brought to you by Resident Evil 4. Want to play it on Xbox? Too bad. So sorry. But yeah, would you go to something like that with you? Like if you and I got offered to go?
I would be too curious to say no.
I think so too.
Like in the same way that you want to learn about metadata, I am so curious what some guys paid money to say about metadata on a stage.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like what is it? People just talking mic stands and webcams.
Yeah. Let's talk about face lights.
I don't know. Yeah, I would be very curious.
Me too. I'd go.
Man,
that's not today.
No.
Thank you so much for watching the 130th episode of the Sidekick Gaming Podcast, The Bro Show. I'm Jake. That's Ted. Couple of gaming bros.